G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and a fantastic end to your weekend. Now, I know it's just Australia, but overall, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, often overlooked and underappreciated in, I guess, modern society. But I hope that you're having a fantastic day. Everyone has a dad. Reach out to them as well. Now, today I may look a little bit worse for wear, and I'm feeling every bit of it. For those who know, I served in the military at the 7th Battalion. Now, that battalion is actually collapsing and having a bit of a reshuffle at the moment, but the proud long history of that is at least on pause for a while. So we had our final regimental ball, and I had a fantastic time. And a shout out to all the lads, past and present, who are serving in the 7th Battalion. But today we do have a lot to go over. We do have a lot of maps to go over. We need to look exclusively, I guess, at the Pokrovsk and Kursk directions. We know that area around Pokrovsk is changing rapidly, that Russia is having advancement there. We need to look at what some Ukrainian volunteers are saying, and now a lot of what the media is saying, and then we'll have a look at the maps in all the other fronts as well. Legends, we're on the internet more than ever, and with more people working remote, what that means is you're connecting to a lot of different networks. Now, obviously, you and I, we don't want network providers or anyone else seeing what we are looking at. Well, thankfully, I am covered thanks to today's video sponsor, Private Internet Access. Now, private internet access is a VPN, or a virtual private network. Now, this is a tool that makes your internet connection more secure and more private. It does this by creating a protected path, like a tunnel, for your data to travel through. It hides your real location and keeps your online activities private. Now, why would you actually use a VPN? Well, for example, you know I talk to a lot of very sensitive contacts, and this assures me and them privacy protection. It hides my real IP address and encrypts our internet traffic, making it difficult for others to track my online activities. As for security, it protects your data from hackers, especially if you're using public Wi-Fi networks. But my partner and I, we mainly use this to get our money's worth for something like our Netflix subscription, because of course Netflix will only show you what is available in your country. So just for an example, like here I am on then Australian Netflix. And Australian Netflix can be a little bit average, but if we just click on then the private internet access, we'll go to US, we'll go to Atlanta, we'll turn it then on, and all we need to do is give this now a quick refresh. And what we'll see is then everything is updated and you've got all new shows to watch. And I'm currently about 3/4 of the way through watching Breaking Bad. We also use this when I'm traveling so we can continue watching a show together. I use private internet access, and I recommend to my friends and my followers that they do as well. So click my link below, and not only will you get then 4 months for free, but you'll be getting over 80% off. Thank you, Private Internet Access, for sponsoring this video. So we'll jump straight into the maps. Of course, in the center of your screen, we have Ukraine and the capital of Kyiv. The red area is occupied since 22, the purple since 2014. The green and blue is area Ukraine has liberated, taken back, or either over 2 weeks being green, under is in blue, or if we look up in the Kursk Oblast, this is area that Ukraine is occupying inside Russia as well. Some of this should be turning green at some point, as it is well now over 2 weeks. It'll get us an idea of those movements then day to day, and the changes will become a little bit easier. But some of the major news that has come out today is that it does seem like Ukrainian reinforcements are reportedly starting to arrive at the Pokrovsk direction to try and slow down the Russian advancement that is occurring there. Now, before we have a real deep dive into the maps, I'll just zoom in down on this Pokrovsk direction. You can see a couple of the changes that we are seeing today. And a lot of this has accelerated since we saw this push up into Kursk Oblast here by the Ukrainian forces. And I said from day one of the Kursk operation that it was very high stakes. It was high reward, but very high risk as well. And it doesn't seem that Russia took the bait that was laid of, we push into here, Russia will have to redeploy forces, and that will stabilize that front. It doesn't seem that the bait has been taken, if that was the original objective. Now, we also said that Russia's best defense to this may actually be to push harder in Avdiivka, in somewhere else as well, that the best defense is often offense. And then you, instead of Ukraine drawing your forces away, you may actually force Ukraine to draw their forces back out as well. Now, the concern here was always that at the absolute bare bones thinking, the numerically inferior side doesn't want to have a longer front line and have to man significantly more areas. And Kursk was, well, say 1,000 square kilometres and a lot longer front line as well, with a lot of experienced, trained units there, as well as a hell of a lot of hardware. And this from day one, go back through my videos, it's caused a lot of concern and confusion for me reporting on this, because I didn't really see what was the overall thinking and outcome of this. And I will say that I'm actually not surprised by the results so far, that now we are seeing somewhere in, say, the east, actually then not only still grinding forward, but actually accelerating as well. If Ukraine is planning on being in a better position come November, if there is some level of negotiation, a lot in the front line is going to have to change, because Kursk has really ground out, at least those large movements have seen they have mainly stopped unless there's some second wave there, and Russia has accelerated their advancement in other areas as well. So let's have a look in here and let's see what some bloggers are saying, what the maps are saying, and some articles from the Telegraph as well. Now, Forbes, of course, I don't really use Forbes that much. I don't find it very reliable, but we do see here that deployed one of its few offensive brigades that desperate to shore up Ukrainian defense around Pokrovsk, a city pre-war population of 60,000. Ukraine's National Guard has deployed one of its handful of offensive brigades, the Kartadag Brigade, approximately 2,000 person brigade from its normal position in southern Ukraine in an unfamiliar battlefield to the east, underscores the urgency of Ukraine's problems between Avdiivka and Pokrovsk. And this is what attritional warfare doctrine tells us, especially if you've got the numerical numbers, is, and we've gone through the doctrine a million times on this, that if you are on the offensive, you want to push in many front lines, 7, 8 different areas, until one starts then falling and create a crisis somewhere else. And Ukraine, I believe, was trying to create a crisis in Kursk, and in turn then create a stability crisis down in here, and that seems that it then may have backfired. Also, speaking on that offensive, when we look at protracted attritional war, those key elements before going on the offensive of mobilization, the industrial capacity to uphold and continue that operation, of course, in Ukraine's case here, meaning reliable deliveries of weapon systems and not waiting on it, so it doesn't start and stop. It has to be like fluid. It doesn't seem that it met those requirements of what we've seen for something like an attritional offensive battle. So that's why it didn't really make that much sense for us. Now, this is what a famous Ukrainian volunteer has then posted on Twitter a couple of days ago, but I found this interesting as I was sent it across here. This gentleman by Serhiy Stenenko. The defense in Pokrov's direction is so disorganized that the Russians themselves do not believe their advances. And I'm seeing in a lot of these Russian pages, and we're going to read an article in a bit, some of the Russians are like, we're not believing how much we're pushing through these areas. Is there some sort of trap being laid? Unfortunately, the higher command is still receiving reports about the controlled situation, which is far from being controlled. This is the problem. If you're shooting up the chain of command that it's under control, this can lead to chaos because the allocation of reserves or equipment may not be there. This is one of the reasons I think Ukraine had a lot of success in Kursk, was the command, the Russian command, wasn't willing to say, this is fucking out of control to the Kremlin, we need all this shit, that they said, no, it's under control. Next thing, Ukraine had a lot forward, and it created then chaos there. He says the main problems in this direction: a poor interaction between brigades and smaller adjacent units, a shortage of people, and their disproportionate distribution in defensive position. So just a shortage of manpower. It doesn't help when a lot of those troops have been ripped away to go somewhere else. Our electronic warfare suppresses our drones better than the enemy electronic warfare. This is something with any sort of electronic warfare. I was electronic countermeasure operator back in the day as well. And this is one of the things. There's pros and cons with everything. That pro is it may jam some stuff. Con is some of your stuff may not work as well. Disorganization of brigade rotations. One can leave before the other has entered. This is where we know a lot of the casualties and a lot of ground is made actually during rotation. The enemy uses this and strikes there. And the command doesn't manage the troops, has no established interaction, and does not have have information about our real positions. They're often cases of units being sent to positions that are already in the rear of the Russians because they think they are behind us. So this not admitting to where the actual front line is causing havoc on these rotations as well. This is causing a hell of a lot of problems if it's not really honest reporting. This is exactly what is happening here. Now, let's then talk through the Telegraph, and then I'll show you where these maps are lining up with, say, Surak and Nelwell reports as well. And masterstroke or folly. Ukraine could pay a high price for its Kursk incursion. The audacious operation has left cities in Donbass exposed to a rapid Russian advance. Since Ukraine pulled elite units from Donbass for its incursion to Kursk, the Russian advance has accelerated. Now, I don't care what Zelensky said the other day, saying that it hasn't accelerated by Deep State's numbers, by War Mappers' numbers, by anyone. It has definitely increased in speed here too. That may not be directly, like I said, correlation is not causation. It doesn't just mean because units are being deployed. What I think it's a bit of column A, column B is that 50%. The other 50% is Russia going, it may be easier for us to push an offensive here harder rather than to try and push that back. And you are doing defensive fighting by offensive in another direction, if that makes sense, to try and turn back the bait that was laid. So this gentleman said, I've never seen such speed in a Russian advance. This is the commander of a Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance unit. It is very rapid, and a problem is the same. We don't have infantry, manpower, like that other gentleman spoke about. We don't have enough artillery or shells. We don't have enough drones. The enemy has deployed powerful electronic warfare units, so we sometimes have to launch 10, 12, 15 drones just to destroy one tank. If one of them is lucky enough to find the EW vehicle, then we could take out the rest. The situation is very complicated and not in our favour. The most critical thing for us now is the large number of soldiers of the Russian Federation. They outnumber us, I reckon, by at least 5 to 1. And this is something we need to talk about. When we talk about the grinding down and the casualties claimed in here, we have these guys saying it could be 5 to 1, others claim 4 to 1, but also the advantage of artillery, infantry, drones. Those are the things causing massive casualties on the front line, and this is where some of the messaging about it's just grinding down and they won't be able to push any further because it would be eventually just unsustainable. We've heard that now for 2 years and it hasn't seemed to come into effect. Same as the sanctions. We heard the first days of the war, well, eventually they being the Russians won't be able to build this or that, hitting the oil won't do this or that, and it hasn't seemed to have the desired effect, even now somewhat mid to long term, depending on what maybe long term's 5 or 10 years. Of course, we don't know yet, but at least at that 2.5+ year mark, we haven't really seen that huge effect start to set in. They say the Russians will be in the city by mid-September. That's referring to Pokrovsk. Battles are ongoing. On the left, if you look from the enemy towards Pokrovsk, in an apparent attempt to bypass the suburb of Minograd, where the urban environment might slow them down. They're trying to break through this flank. Basically, along the track to Pokrovsk, they're succeeding and very successfully. The Centre for Defence Strategies, Ukrainian think tank, said in an assessment on Thursday they will reach the city by mid-September. For Ukraine, this is not good news. So if we have then Pokrovsk here and Minograd and the envelopment to try push out around this, but also the concern needs to be the southerly push and where the defensive lines sit in here. If you want to look at those defensive lines, go have a look at my video yesterday where we went over where those defensive lines are and what effect they then may have on its offensive. Pokrovsk is a strategic junction that sits on both road and rail links that sustain the Ukrainian garrison, holding the front in other parts of the Donetsk region. If Pokrovsk falls, it will seriously complicate logistics for Ukrainian troops around Toretsk, Chasiv Yar, the fortress agglomeration of Slobyansk, Kramatorsk, and Konstantinivka. So let me show you this. So of course, this is a major hub in here, the city of
at one point, pre-war, 60,000 people. This then has a huge effect into areas. This is New York, Toretsk, Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar, Konstantinivka, Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, these large areas remaining in then Donbass. And of course, it then has a massive effect down south where we can see there is more ground being made today. I somewhat of the belief that Russia wants to close up the south before maybe pushing onto Pokrovsk, but time will tell us. To the east of the city, the Ukrainian left have entered Krasny Yar and Horodka. So if we look at these areas, Horodka, and this Krasny Yar here as well. I'll show you on the other maps in a second. In other words, the Russians are poised to conquer a significant swath of Donetsk region, one their stated war aims, dangerously jeopardize the remaining Ukrainian footholds and threaten an attack towards Dnipro. So of course, we have Zap, Dnipro out here, but where the defensive lines sit is more somewhere through here. There may be a bypass almost in behind some of these as well, rendering a lot of this not useless, but a lot less effective than if it was to push, say, straight north as well. That is one of the big concerns in here, but that is much larger overall scale. Threat to the city, direct result of Kursk operation. The desperate situation appears to be a direct result of Ukraine's invasion of Kursk in early August. That operation, planned by General Syrsky, was greenlit by President Zelensky, was meant to draw Russian troops away from this front. Syrsky has said they did not take the bait. While they've moved thousands of troops from other parts of the line to Kursk, on the Pokrovsk front, they have doubled down. This is Russia doubling down troops there. Zelensky testily defended the decision this week, arguing in a press conference that the Russians had been advancing on Pokrovsk even more rapidly before the Kursk operation. The numbers, regardless of what maps you look at, do not support his claim. That's difficult to square with the accounts of officers and enlisted men on the ground. Now, Kursk had a big effect on morale, psychological, a boost for a lot of people looking at this war, as well as a lot of people in Ukraine. But I have said if that then fails, it may have the opposite effect of that. And if you're being told this and you're in Pokrovsk moving real, seeing the real situation, it may have an effect, either the morale, the psychological effect, and how people view the war in Kyiv and Lviv is important. Do not get me wrong. But it is not as important overall as the guy on the front line doing the fighting. Also, it's very important, those sitting in, like, say, the White House, looking at this, or sitting somewhere else that may then be mediating some negotiation and seeing how the outlook of the war then looks. Like I said, if Ukraine is planning to be in a better position come November for negotiations, this situation here is not going to put them in the upper hand going into that. CDS warned the Pokrovsk sector Russia enjoys a 4-to-1 advantage in forces, similar to what the gentleman said before, in resources, drones, and artillery, and that it could be assumed the Russians would reach Pokrovsk mid-September. The Ukrainian withdrawal from Novhorodka, it noted, indicates a lack of sufficient resources for defence, even on advantageous lines. This is the area we saw, that video I showed you of the Ukrainian tank being hit by an RPG, and the city itself was actually in not completely destroyed like a lot of the cities we've seen through. And again, like they say in this, indicates a lack of sufficient resources, and this is the claimed advantageous positions. Remember when Avdiivka fell, the advent move, we're pulling out to go to more advantageous positions, but Dachi, and then it was Prohez down the Volcha here, and then it was Vesely, and this is grinding backwards, and I do question, further beyond this, how built up are the defensive works pulling back and back. Ukrainian sources claim the Russians are suffering record casualties in the Pokrovsk direction, and they'll be unable to sustain the current pace of advance for much longer. This is something that we can't confirm or deny. We do not know the actual numbers, but what we can look at is this has been claimed since, or even pre-Bakhmut as well, and it hasn't really had the desired effect even now, short to mid-term, saying a year and a half. But also, we know in modern battlefield that most people are KIA, WIA by artillery, the numerical advantage of artillery, numerical advantage of soldiers, and as well drones, fabs, things like this too. So there are questions that would be asked there as well if I was sitting in a command position being told exactly that. Even some Russian but I will say, but the advancing offensive force always will be expected to take much higher casualties. If you've got more guys there and advancement, you're expected to take more, but is that outweighed as well? If it's 5-1 more troops have already got there, it needs to be greater than that to have then the desired effect pushing on as well. Even some Russian war bloggers are uneasy, writing on Telegram that recent advances have been suspiciously smooth. Perhaps they suggest the Ukrainians are preparing some kind of trap. And we have spoken about this, that you push them forward, you get them into a position for you, maybe some level of large-scale flank, but looking at those offensive things that you need to have to go, I don't know if the mobilisation or the reliability of the Western deliveries has been met that yet to have a massive, large attack on this. It can't just be very localised. And it needs to be ongoing, and especially heading into the wet season and then the winter as well. The truth is few outside the Ukrainian and Russian high commands really know what is going on. That's very important to note too. Could the Ukrainians be planning a stage 2 of the Kursk operation? Will the elite units who led the assault there be switched back to Donbass to hold the line? Will Ukraine fight for Pokrovsk or retreat as it has done from outlying villages? All things that will come in the future, and we'll have the answer to these questions. Or is it simply as it appears, an exhausted Ukrainian army finally buckling to the logic of superior Russian numbers? Do you think that is what it is? Now, what I ask and what I'd put forward to you guys is you can make up your own mind of that. If we use Occam's razor being what is the most likely. If you don't know Occam's razor, a lot of doctors use this. Someone comes in with a cough, you might go, right, let's look for the common cold. You don't look for something crazy off the bat. If you see hoof prints in the dirt, you don't think zebra, you think horse. Then do further investigating. With that, with the most likely, which one of these do you believe that is the most likely? I'm probably leaning at this point in this direction. There is nothing positive to say. Everything is difficult from a Ukrainian commander. We are fighting, and now we will see what kind of reinforcements there will be, if any, and then we'll build a defence on that. We're trying to cut their main supply routes, but they don't stop. So, look, the messaging I'm getting privately out of here too, I'm waiting on some stuff as well, hasn't really been great at all either. And for how guys are feeling about this and looking at what's happening in Kursk as well. So look, we see this southerly push down here. And if we zoom in on this, we can have a look straight off the bat. And this is where this is lining up somewhat with Noel Reports' map, a Ukrainian map here. But what he is showing different is this. This Dolenivka, he has shown has come under control as well. This is the importance of showing multiple maps from multiple sources. That Dolenivka, Noel Reports are saying, has come under control. And then we know Syriac is also saying this, and I'll show you on some other maps. I'll actually start at the end here. So that they've taken control over the locality of Dolenivka in this area. So not only in here, but they've also taken Dolenivka, filling this then in further. But let's zoom out and we'll look at this as a whole. We do have a couple of map updates. So you can see this first push out to the south, but I showed you the updated one on that. We can see further push well into Selyadov as well, more up to basically right where the grey zone is shifting here. But if you see the spoil of a quarry here too, and Malinivka, so here's showing this red dot, Malinivka is all under control, and through to the north of Selyadov and Selyadov itself, and a further push out along the rail line to the north of Novohorivka as well. Now, let's continue on this. This is further down in the south. As you can see, a push to the south down in here. But again, the map I showed you first, the south isn't updated on here, but you can see that it has cascaded, collapsed further and further down to the south. And it does seem that Russia is having more success to the south. Now, does that mean that the defences are easier that way, therefore that's why they're making more ground, or are they trying on that southerly push like we have speculated? Now we look up in the north, we see just a small bit made in the direction of Horivka as well. Now this is an area which some will say is vastly different, being told between these two maps. Now let's zoom in on here to get a better look. So we can see these two reservoirs up here. Surak is showing a push right up between these as well. That's been there for a couple of days. Let's have a look where this road runs through Horivka. that he's showing as well. The majority of Horovka, 90%, is now under Russian control. So this all looking much, much different in here, according to Syriac maps. But again, what we can confirm, what we can 100% confirm, is there is changes in this direction day after day. It is pushing, pushing, pushing. Will it end? Where will it end? Well, we don't know. Again, this map on Deep State shows nothing up in the north. Noel reports as well, not showing any changes, I believe, since the 29th, so a couple of days. But he does show in here that there is a Ukrainian movement that's been reported out around here, and that there are Russian forces in danger in just this area where my cursor is there. We'll wait for further confirmations of any of that. Now, Syriac is keeping up more so in these directions, and he does show some Ukrainian advancements. So he's showing as well that Ukraine have completely captured the area of Borky around in here. From my understanding, Borky here has been very, very fluid to and from with Russian attacks, Ukrainian counterattacks, blah, blah, both ways. So it's hard to get then an idea. And if we have a look, best ways we see where this road runs out here, that Ukraine had some advancement just off in around about here. It's really hard to see on these maps because some of the localities actually don't pop up, but there is, he's saying, control right out into here, blue zone, and that there still is Ukrainian advancement in that direction as well. So again, we'll actually get a better idea on the north because it has really seemed now to slow down and somewhat stabilize. We'll get a better idea of where things sit, although the maps are just showing so much different in a lot of areas. Now, let's look at other areas on these maps. Now, where I first want to talk is we looked at this Pokrovsk-Avdiivka front, so let's just come down to Ugledar. Now, what a lot of people are speculating is that there's going to be a pincer by Russia to pincer in this area to try and close not only this up, get behind then that defensive line in here. So let's have a look at where Russia is pushing in here in either a westwards or northerly direction as well. So as you can see on this map straight away, Russia has made, by this map, large amounts of ground through Konstantinivka, about 3 kilometers, which is a mile and a half. So let's have a little bit of a squeeze in here. Now, this isn't always the easiest thing to line up. So where we're talking about here is just north of then Konstantinivka. So coming down, this is Konstantinivka in here. You can see the road that he's putting just some degree out here. Again, yep, these maps today, fairly close. Does show more west, I'd say, on this Syriac, but again, for looking at two separate maps, still very, very close. Now, where we're talking about here is then Polbita, which is just slightly north of here. You can see this road then dog legs out, that he's showing that there is some control pushing just down around about here, and then further on the other side of this road. So about where my cursor is, more like where the grey zone is here, filling in, but also showing where this ground has been made in here. So we 100% can confirm, 100% there has been some amount of ground shift right in around here. Now, while we're here, let's just push up a little bit more, and then we'll look at Krasnodarivka in here as we do have a further update. Now, what he's showing is, see this rail line is here, that basically where the grey zone is here, a push out, but he's actually showing that it's just this paddock. It doesn't show the amount of push down that the deep state is showing, so some change he's suggesting has been carried out around that area. Now, let's keep pushing our way down into the south. No changes around Ugledar. Now we come to Starmorsky Uruzani front. This is where things get somewhat interesting as well, is Syriac is showing that there is more Russian advancement again today. So let's have a look, see where this bends back to the west. He's suggesting just out in this area right here, is under or coming under Russian control on both sides of the river through here. Of course, this is where Ukraine had its 2023 counter-offensive. Now let's push further west and we come down into Robotny. Now this is the area where these maps show differences on some fronts in here. This is where it is completely different from each other. So it's actually hard to get an idea because of how different these actually look. So this is Robotny here. Then this is the red dot of Robotny. We zoom in one, you will see where the main road, goddamn, won't load. The main road runs just up through here that he's suggesting all of this basically has been somewhat filled in, and then a further push right up through into these areas up in here as well. So much different in this area, showing much more control and change. So see where this comes back out, that the push is right up into this front as well. So Robotny, again, significantly different. This map hasn't shown any Robotny moves for now a long time. We talked about Chasiv Yar, Bakhmut front. Now we do have just an update here. Chasiv Yar, this is just right in here. For some reason this isn't liking me to load, but again, these show very similar. I looked at it just then before this as well. Come down Toretsk, New York front. No change then shown on this map today. For some reason this is not liking me at all. Apologies. There we go. Let's have a look. Toretsk. Now, just more ground we see just out through here. In Druzhba, some ground being made in there. We know there's a secondary push of Divka, Pokrovsk, Uglidar in here. And this is what the attritional protracted war says. You have to push on many different fronts until you start sort of getting an ease on somewhere. Now, we do see another change on the deep state map today out from Peshani. What we do think is that this down here where we saw push yesterday is trying to envelop. Then if we can go back to yesterday, see this, trying to envelop this front of Bedestov and push to the Oskil to split this into the north and south and use the natural border of having a waterway. Now, this is showing much different in here today. If we look, this red dot, this is around near Bedestove as well. That this is a push out further in the north of here, as well as a push all the way down in here as well. Again, very hard to get an exact idea what is actually happening. So positions east and north of Bedestove, in addition, Russian force cross the Zerabets River and a new locality of Stelmakivkia as well in this front. So again, pushing everywhere, but we will see the outcome of what this is. Is a trap being laid in Pokrovsk, or is it the overall just can't keep up with the tempo that Russia is pushing on those defensive works? Anyway, legends, look after yourself. Have a great day. I'm going to go back to the couch. I'll speak tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.